Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AI podcast without the hype. This is Zero Shot, and here with you today is me, James Gauci, CEO of Cadent, and Llew Jury. Welcome,
Llew
mate.
Jury. Llew Jury, Managing Director of Advancer and everything. And it's great to be here today, James. This is going to be a cracker of an episode, isn't it?
I'm really excited for this one because today we're going to be talking about all of the big players in AI, and we're going to do the social media content thing, and we're going to tier list all of the major players in AI. And I think one of the things that is exciting me most about this one is that it's such a dynamic landscape. And all it takes is 3 months for a company to just kind of no longer be relevant because somebody else just took the mantle in their particular area.
It is. And identifying, James, who has the strategic moat and who's struggling to rationalize their spend, whether it's in the public markets or the private markets, and why the hardware versus software lines are totally blurring. And this changes day to day, doesn't it?
It does indeed. I mean, just the other day, I saw something online, and it was 11 Labs is about to go out of business because this free model was just released and you can run it on your laptop. So it's very dynamic. And yeah, today we can also talk about maybe the way that hardware and software is kind of interacting and how that's making the decisions that these companies make a little bit more difficult than they otherwise would have been. So let's get started. What do you reckon?
Yeah, and the key takeaway, I suppose, for today for me is which studios had the long-term stamina to support enterprise ROI and who is just a bit of a feature, and discovering all of that too. So yeah, let's get cracking.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't encountered a tier list before, a tier list runs from A through to F. That's classic kind of American grading system. But then above A is S, and S tier is where you want to be. S tier is absolutely the top. And so today we've got our list of leading AI studios, and I think we should before we get into the first studio, which will be OpenAI, I'd love for you to introduce our sponsor.
Yeah, our sponsors are awesome, and thanks so much to them. It's promptcowboy.ai. This episode, like every episode, is brought to you with thanks to Prompt Cowboy, the fastest way to turn everyday business into automated workflows. If you've ever wished to build a better prompt, you need to head over to their digital ranch and help them do that repetitive work for you. They wrangle the hard stuff so you can focus on what matters. Talk to the guys, Matt and Henry, over at promptcowboy.ai and get your business writing smoother than ever. Woohoo! Lasso that one.
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw.
All right, let's get straight into OpenAI then. OpenAI, their story is a long one. They've been around for a long time. It seems like at the inception of AI, everybody who was anybody in Silicon Valley was involved somehow, but a lot has changed since then, Llew. Where do they sit now for you?
Wow. Well, let's go back to the future here. And they're sitting in so many different areas in the universe, aren't they? There's the sort of the current models they've got and everybody using it, whether they're a consumer brand versus a business brand. There's all the legal things going on with Elon Musk and the sort of the a la Google, the don't be evil stuff, those legal things. Then there's the legal things with some of the training of their foundation models. And then there's the legal things going on with Microsoft. And it's just, there's so many balls in the air for them. And then commentary coming through, which is quite interesting about infrastructure. And whether, they can actually build quick enough in the US, the data centers that are required, maybe nuclear power plants that are required to actually cost effectively with energy, actually power OpenAI's generally ChatGPT and everything that goes along with it. So look, there's a couple of reflections there. There's sort of the big, how they are structurally, what's happening with them, with the IPO potential at the end of the year, being 2026. Right through to their leadership and Sam Altman and what he often says in the markets and where he's guiding everybody on the journey, through to actually how, their actual LLM, their GPTs perform. I think for me, they're a winner in terms of the consumer market. And I think to me, they've slightly slipped, and we'll talk about that a little bit later with Gemini eating their lunch in the last couple of months. But look, generally, they're still a winner with about James, is 800 million weekly active users, and they're sort of nailing that consumer space.
So if you had to put them on the tier list, Where are you going to put them? S, A, B, C, D, F?
I've been reflecting about this one. To me, they're sort of an A still. They're an A grader. They're not my S at the moment. They're not my super awesome, which I call it.
Yeah.
But they're an A grader. Maybe they're slipping to an A minus, but they're holding that A average for me. They're not into that B or C category. They're not heading towards an F yet. But look, so many moving parts. The money they're going to have to raise, the trillions, the billions, to hit their $1 trillion valuation. It's a moving feast, and let's revisit them maybe just in their isolation in every quarter throughout this year. But to me, it's still a solid A. And you, mate?
For me, they're a B tier. And this is coming from somebody who used to be a big fan of what OpenAI was doing, but they've had such a massive talent exodus. They've got so much financial uncertainty. They've changed the fundamental values of their organization more times than I can count now. And it kind of leaves me feeling like they've lost their way a little bit. And to cap it all off, ChatGPT is getting ads. And it just all feels like a little bit of the too many moves of desperation starting to happen out of OpenAI. It's like all the people who actually had the ultimate technical vision for what they were trying to achieve have since gone on to found their own things or work in environments which maybe suit them personally a little bit better. And so for that reason, because of trajectory and because of trend, controversially, maybe, I'm putting them in the B tier. Of course, they're still right up there in model performance. They're still, in the top 3 for kind of reasoning capabilities and coding capabilities and things like that. For me, I'm a bit bearish. I'm going to put them in B. B for bear.
B for bear. I like it. Look, they were heading towards a B for me, but they got an A because I can still book a great trip to Vietnam, or those people that have any money, they can go to Tuscany, find Michelin star restaurants, and it will just do the whole thing for you.
It will do the whole thing for you, but it'll be sponsored by Webjet now, and you won't get a choice.
And it's kayak. They had kayak as well, didn't they, in the agentic window? So yeah, look, that's cool, mate. I think sits, as I said, an A minus. Maybe we take the B and the A and see where it ends up.
I'm happy with a low A for now, and then we trend down. Let's put him in A tier. Sounds good,
mate. I don't want to sway you, but I'm sure Jenny will pop this up, and we'll have them up in big A over the top of my head or something. But no, mate, awesome. Let's move on to the next one, and it's it's a favourite of ours, isn't it, James? It's the dark horse, Anthropic and Claude. Over to you, mate.
Anthropic, yes, famously started by one of those original members of the exodus from OpenAI, Dario Amodei, and they've originally set out to create an ethical AI companion. And fast forward to now, they seem the most stable of the frontier AI labs, in my view. They have industry-leading models in the form of their Claude models. So Opus is their leading model.
4.5 is amazing, isn't it?
Reasoning is just off the chart. And even cost per token and their ability to kind of partner up with the hyperscalers like Azure and AWS, and they're playing Switzerland really nicely, I think.
They are.
So for me right now, they're the S tier, and they're the S tier because they're keeping friends at the same time as kicking major technical goals. And they seem to be, at the very least, making enough business to justify their existence, unlike many frontier labs who are at the bleeding edge.
Yeah, all good points, mate. And the other one for me is trust. They definitely have the trust of not only the data that's coming back and the awesomeness that we're getting out of our own journey that we're doing at Advancer with our clients. We're putting Copilot Studio on top of Opus 4.5, and it's 40 to 50% better responses and reasoning and rational thinking, if you want to call it that, from the results that we're getting compared to OpenAI. So to me, they are definitely an A. They're not my S today. There's an S coming, just because of the land grab stuff and probably my background. But basically, to me, they're winning the trust piece, and they're winning it in a key area for me. They're winning it in that Switzerland is a great example, but they're also, additionally to that, winning the enterprise space. They've really, when you win enterprise, it's a very hard ask to beat, say, a Microsoft as a sort of a enterprise incumbent with the authentication layer with Copilot and all the things that go on. So to me, they're optimized for trust. The market is very quickly coming around to them. Claude is already baked in. It was one of the first from that trust point to actually give references inside the search results, the GPT results. And I actually think their challenge in the future is staying relevant and safe and trusted in this arms race of GPTs and frontier models. So yeah, to me, they're an A. I'm very positive today, but they're also an A. They're probably, if you want to sort of separate my A's, they're over the top of OpenAI. That A minus with OpenAI, A solid A for Claude.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anthropic and Claude.
One little bit of icing on the cake is Claude Code, which has to get a mention, which is
we've got to talk about
the best in class agent harness. And I think it's the product design that I appreciate most about what Anthropic is doing.
Yeah.
They're maintaining human-centered design, and they're maintaining, this is part of how they demonstrate trust, is they ensure that there is an adequate amount of interaction between the person and the agent in order to feel like we are still in control. Whether or not we are, that's a psychological discussion, which we won't discuss today, but like studies coming out now saying that for the standard professional software engineer, 30 to 50% increased productivity by using Claude Code, and no impact on maintainability or code bloat when it's a professional engineer. It's just absolutely
huge.
gnarly. Let's move on to they feel old and dusty now, Meta, but they're trying really hard to stay relevant. They were the first big lab to come out with open weight models like Llama. Where do they sit for you?
Oh, look, I'm the reason they actually jumped up to a solid B for me from probably a D or a C. They were probably a solid C 6 months ago, if not slipping to a D, because Zuckerberg had been investing billions, literally billions in infrastructure to sort of meet the arms race of pure AI. What he did, though, was buy the platform that I use a lot of, and I do a lot in our training, our AI masterclasses, which is Manus. And Manus originally was a Chinese model in partnership with MIT out of Boston. And then it spun into a Singapore company, and the auspices changed. So we started using it a lot. It was one of the first, and it still is one of the first truly agentic platforms. And just before Christmas, I think we mentioned in our last pod that basically they got purchased by, this is Manus, got purchased by Meta. And they instantly jumped from, let's call it a bottom C to a B for me, just because of the Manus play and the visionary nature of that transaction and deal, whatever that might be. So I think they're doing 100 mil ARR thereabouts, Manus, and I think they'll be turbocharged. The jury is out in terms of what Meta does with them and how they use them as their model. Do they put them into business and sort of do another Facebook for business, which got shut down? How are they going to absorb it in there? And hopefully they don't touch it too much and try and consumerize it in the business sense. James, your thoughts?
So Meta, just an interesting one. Like, they haven't played the game like anybody else has, and that's really interesting to me, just as a spectator, I suppose. For me, I'm realizing that I'm biased towards the trending direction of an organization in my tier list. They're a D for me, and they're a D for me because they had the top seat, and now, and then they got so desperate to maintain the momentum that they built for themselves that they started offering 7 and 8 figure pay packets to OpenAI employees and Anthropic employees and so on. And it just makes you wonder, do they have what it takes to continue to push? And the purchase of Manus makes absolute sense. They need to kind of put some ballast into their operation in order to maintain that momentum and that feeling of winning. Culture. They do have culture in Silicon Valley companies, contrary to popular belief. But if it was Manus, absolutely A tier for me. But now that it's Meta with a side of Manus, it's got to be D. Llama was the de facto for such a long time, and the Chinese labs are just eating their lunch. And so, they're on a D for me. But having said that, I'll settle with you on a C. Would you settle for a C?
I'd settle for a C, and because they've got to prove themselves. There's a long way to go, and
they do have a good track record of acquisition with the likes of Instagram and so on.
Well, they do, absolutely. And the other question is about sort of why they could go to a C or drop to a C is because of the Scale AI purchase and the billions they spent on the young chap that runs that. And I think that they don't want to do that again and repeat that, because that's an expensive acquisition, right? So I think that was a bit of posturing. I think the rubber is hitting the road with the Manus purchase. But yeah, let's put them at a C. Happy to do that, mate.
Wonderful. Now, we move to a couple of the Chinese labs. We've got Alibaba with their Qwen model. And for those who haven't encountered Qwen before, Qwen is arguably, as of this moment, the leading open model studio in the world. Some of the stuff, especially in the small scale, is just absolutely unreal. Should I go first or should you go first, Llew? What do you want to do?
You go first because I've got
All
some
right.
opinions about it, and that you go, mate. Yeah.
For me, they are I'm going to put them at a B. And the main reason why I put them at a B is I'm wearing my business hat right now, Australian business person hat right now. Supply chain becomes a question. When you take your business seriously and you take your AI seriously, supply chain becomes a question. And when you need to trust something, you want to make sure that trust has been verified and that the models have been adequately red teamed and that they've been deployed into environments that truly test their capabilities to the nth degree. And I don't know enough about Qwen's AI safety approach and red teaming approach. I'm sure it's pretty good, but from what I can see, there's still a B tier, but their star is certainly on the rise because when we do our work, when we're engineering AI systems for other organizations, most of the models that we look at first are Qwen models because they're small, they're light, they perform really, really well for what they are. And in that way, they are absolutely leaders in the industry.
Yeah, look, and you'd know more about them. We haven't used them very much. We've investigated them alongside DeepSeek and a couple of others, but we're sort of, I suppose, again, it's a corporate branding play in Australia to your opening remarks. I think that's the issue that they've got, and we just don't see enough of them. I know that they're powerful. They're kind of seen over here as a bit quirky. They're sort of like an Alibaba sort of play that Alibaba is that cool thing that we get cheap stuff online, and do they actually have a frontier model and all that sort of thing. So I think they've got very strong tech from what I've seen, but a little bit of a weak global trust in the business and corporate space. I wouldn't say, I can't actually count on any hands or feet how many clients of mine have gone, we want to go with Qwen. We've definitely tested Qwen with voice AI, and it's been very, very good as the underlying model. But I think that we've always defaulted back to the Googles of the world for reliability, just because we're more conditioned in that space. So we understand it's powerful. We understand it's really good, but maybe geopolitics is getting in the way a little bit here from a branding and perception point of view. And it's one that's sort of let's wait and see, I think, about once, these others having to pay for the tokenization and the costs and the infrastructure and the energy and all of that, maybe these cheap Chinese models will actually do what everybody probably fears in the US, is actually penetrate a lot quicker. So at the moment, they're a C minus for me, a C heading towards a D, just because they've got to prove themselves.
I'll pop them into C. I can settle on a C. I think my assessment is certainly coloured by their recent advancement, where they brought out Qwen TTS and some of those small models for voice cloning, which is scary and impressive. And conversational speech, free. Yeah. They run on your laptop. It's absolutely unreal. Like 11 Labs' entire business model is like seriously under threat as a result, and it makes me it's an impressive feat, which makes them a leader in my book. But I'm happy to sit on a C if that works for you, Llew.
Sounds good. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's move on to the next one. Do you want to take it from here?
Well, the Kimi model is one that I don't know too much about. It's probably the least one out of all of them, Moonshot. And it's something that basically I've seen a lot of good demos out there. A lot of really cool things like YouTubers doing, you got to do this and you got to do that, and it's really fast. So speed is the big one. I've never, though, seen an enterprise play. I've never seen the Kimi and enterprise or those sort of things linked together. And I sort of get the feeling that maybe it's one of the smartest models again that no one's actually deploying, a bit like that whole comment about, Qwen. So I actually think that, are they actually real? I understand it, but a little bit obscure. And, there's only 24 hours in the day, unfortunately. And it's not something that I'm going to sit. Yeah, I'm not going to, exactly. I'm not going to sit there at, 11 p.m. at night and go, now let's give it, a crack to Kimi. And I think that's the one for me. They're a D, again, being from the Australian perspective, the branding perspective, they're just not on the radar.
For me, so Moonshot, they're kind of China's answer to Anthropic in some ways. Yeah. They're going really hard for the developer market, the software engineering market. They're building, they're essentially the new DeepSeek in a lot of ways. That's how I would kind of characterize them, where they're building this absolutely gigantic model, hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes. You need a small data center just to run it, kind of thing, or you need to be clustering like 4 different unified RAM boxes, blah, blah, blah. But you don't need to stay up till 11 at night looking at these
Thank
things,
you.
Llew, because that's I could do that for both of us.
Thank you, mate.
But yeah, so they're right up there with the frontier models from OpenAI and Claude Code. And Anthropic, I should say, especially in coding benchmarks. And it's part of it is a bit of a brute force approach. We're going to build a big model that performs really well across a lot of different tasks. My take on why it's possibly not as popular is because the kind of hardware that can run it is like absolute hen's teeth at the moment. We've heard about the RAM prices going absolutely crazy as a result of RAM chips being bought up en masse to run these types of large open source models on your own hardware. And they're somewhat a victim of that in the small and medium business realm. But what I can see is people who prioritize a kind of sovereignty and security and like ring fencing their AI and have the resources to put into buying that kind of hardware for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, like big law firms and things like that. Kimi K2 for me, foreshadowing a little bit here, is kind of like the new DeepSeek in that respect. But for me, Moonshot and their Kimi model, I'm going to put them as a C. That's where I would put them, and it's mainly because of that uptake. And I don't know enough about their corporate strategy yet to determine whether or not they're kicking the goals that they're setting for themselves. They just got a big model that performs well. It's very impressive, and now it remains to be seen of whether they can build a sustainable business out of it.
Likewise, mate. It's a C for me, and I'll leave it there. Let's go to the next one. NVIDIA.
The boys in green.
The boys in green. And as we're recording this in early Feb 2026, going through a little bit of, the typical public markets type play, and they're down 9% overnight in terms of their share price. There's a bit of a typical, early starts of the year wobble in the public markets. But, NVIDIA is still the darling, isn't it? It's still the world's richest company. It's started out as a gaming company. James, over to you, mate. What's your thoughts of where they sit?
NVIDIA's a B for me. I think, and this is through the lens of them being a frontier AI lab, right? Yeah. And again, their trendingness, like they're certainly still on the ascent, even though their share prices are somewhat ephemeral at the moment, especially in technology. But for them, I think they've done a really good job of maintaining their hardware leadership. And it's only now that the AMDs and the Intels of the world are starting to wake up and really put big investments into their own ways of running frontier models. But they aren't competitors in the frontier space. Like Intel's got some models, but they're all fine tunes. And I'm sure AMD has some models of their own, but they don't have the pipeline to run the models like NVIDIA does, which gives them a competitive kind of internal vertically integrated advantage. And what I'm about to say put them up on this list for me. They went to the big gaming conference recently, or Consumer Electronics Conference, CES, and usually it's all about their brand new graphics cards for gaming, and this is coming out this year, and that's coming out this year. Jensen Huang got up on stage at the Consumer Electronics Show and spruiked his enterprise server hardware. And for me, that was a bit telling, and I think tells us a lot about where they're going to be continuing to invest over the course of 2026. And I don't see their rise abating on this tier list for quite some time. So I think they're a B for frontier models and as a frontier lab, but as a business, S tier, you can't argue with it.
No, totally. S tier for me as a business, as the logo, and very interesting what they do and what Jensen does, and what that leather jacket he wears, and he's a rock star, and he's been plugging away for decades here, with gamers for the first sort of 10, 15 years, and then into this sort of world, and all the GPUs and stuff. So, look, they're a solid B for me at the moment. They're a wait and see. They're an S, absolutely, as an infrastructure company and an enterprise company, but as a front-end model company, they're a B. I want them to get to S. The reason why is I've been testing PersonaPlex, which is a full duplex voice AI model. And you probably know by listening to this that I do a lot of work in the voice AI space. this capability introduced with Moshi basically lets people interrupt each other. And it's a new behavior for that latency that's seen in voice AI. So if anybody's heard AI before, there's a bit of a pause. There's 1.5 to 2 seconds occasionally with 11 labs and the different models you might use. But this PersonaPlex, everybody should look at PersonaPlex. We might actually put this into the actual comments and let people link, because there's an AI telling a joke to one of the engineers at NVIDIA. And basically it's a Rajashi Roy, and he's interrupting. They're telling jokes and they're laughing together, which we've never heard before. And I think that traditional versus new latency is going to be quite important for these full duplex models. So I actually think that for me, they're on the up if they can get some of these things right that I care about.
Excellent. Well, NVIDIA B tier by the sounds of things. So I think we both put it in B.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Let's move on to little did you know, AWS has a frontier lab.
They do.
They create of course, AWS is Amazon Web Services, Jeff Bezos, the largest data center hyperscaler company in the world. And of course, they own a ton of GPUs. And so they have a lot of AI floating around. And they've got a range of AI models that they offer as part of their services. Where do you put them on the tier list, Luke?
For the intensive purpose of how we're comparing today, they're a C for me. They've been described as selling the plumbing when people wanted appliances, and they're awesome at that back end infrastructure layer. You go and, as we know, James, in the startup world and the software development world, we're all on AWS spinning things up. Some of us are using Bedrock and but we're all been on S3 for many years, setting up our containers and all that sort of world, which still confuses me, by the way. They just haven't sold, again, a bit like some of those Chinese models, sold well enough into their sort of frontier space. And I think they're coming through. There was one, James, you mentioned at one of those Moreton Bay presentations last year. It was a Page Up or Page something. It actually was one of the other speakers on stage with you, but they gave a presentation about their equivalent of Windsurf or Replit or Cursor, Lovable. It was called Page something. But so they're trying to dabble and get it out there. And so to me, they're just not punching to the levels of where the other guys are really, really competing in the SME or the corporate space.
I couldn't agree more. As a lab, I put them in F tier, which and we are AWS partners. I'm sorry to my account executive who may or may not listen to this podcast, but as a lab, I put him in F. As an AI kind of member of the AI ecosystem, I put him like A, verging on an S. That's for their business strategy. It's not for the AI capability. The AI capability, they were the OG machine learning and AI guys like 10 plus years ago. They were the only place to run and develop and train and fine tune models for various applications throughout the industry back before AI hit the mainstream.
The only competitor was IBM Watson. Remember that one?
Yeah. On Blooming Jeopardy, beating everybody. How quaint that looks now. But yeah, AWS, their models are really lackluster. Like, we use them a lot in our prototyping phases just to get a dumb, cheap model. This is so rude to AWS. A dumb, cheap model to try and prototype things with so that we can improve the design. It's kind of like we want to improve the design of our systems by using low-powered models, so that when we design the system around that model, we plug in a good one, its performance jumps massively. Like, it's a neat technique, but they just disappoint. They don't seem to be putting money behind it, but they are doing a really good job of being the marketplace for AI models. You can just run any model on their infrastructure. They've got the killer app in Australia for AWS and AI. You can run Claude on Sydney hardware. And that's something that we do all the time for our clients, and people don't expect that you can do that. And when you tell them, they go, "Oh, cool. Well, obviously we're going to go with that, right?" Yeah.
And really important for healthcare and protecting information and things like that, which you can't build outside of the auspices of Australia. So super important, mate. Super important.
So I put them on F, and you put them on C, was it?
I put them on C just because they're so baked into the generation of the startup community. And they've still got very powerful infrastructure behind them, and Bedrock,
biggest moat in the world.
Biggest moat in the world. So I've got to give them a C. Lots of people would say, hang on, they're an A, but I just think for this, it's a C.
I agree. Well, I've got them on an F. Maybe we can settle on a D. Would you meet me halfway,
Yeah,
Lou, or are you going to
let's do
fight
it.
for your C?
Meet me halfway. No, let's do it. Let's do a D. Let's do a D for the rating scale of what we're doing the tiering in. So
very cool. Microsoft.
all right, throw the pen. Like it's wow. Where do we start, James? Shall we focus around Copilot or authentication, or what do we want to talk about here? And how are we going to rate it? How are we going to do the rating?
It's got to, like, we've started to make a bit of a yardstick here, and we're going on kind of model capability and whether they're going to stand the test of time and
correct,
like with the delivery of those models. And I think Microsoft made an exceptional play at the right time. They used their capital to move in the right direction with OpenAI investments, and then later partnerships with Anthropic. And now they've got AI integrated everywhere, but they just went so quickly for a company that is famous for their crap product management and ownership. They just went way too fast and frankly confused everyone. And I think they forgot the fundamentals along the way, which is that if they want to be considered as serious players, if they want to build capabilities internally to implement AI systems into already complicated products, they can't just go slapping the label Copilot on things and then putting their half-baked FI model behind the scenes as the bread and butter. I think it's caused them more harm than good, but that's my take. I'm a bit of an anti-Microsofter in some ways. Just living in Brisbane, you can't get away from Microsoft whether you like it or not. So I'm a bit conditioned that way. But for me, I put them in D.
Yeah, look, close for me. I'm going with a C. To me, they're like a daggy uncle in the sort of the khaki bone cardigan. Like they just have so much promise, but just get it so wrong. And I just think, to me, they've got a huge moat. They've got access into the enterprise / medium to large businesses in Australia and beyond. They've got the authentication layer baked in, and they've sort of then gone, well, let's just, instead of, I think early on, they were building their own models, right? And they went, actually, let's go and invest in OpenAI and let's go and give them $1 billion and get first rights at the models. And we know, all of us know, that the Copilot model is version 5, let's say. It's nothing like 5.2 currently on OpenAI's ChatGPT. And OpenAI mustn't have been giving them the best, most powerful model, but they're sort of, expecting that, users expect that when you log on, you're going to get an amazing result. And unfortunately, that's just not happening. We do a lot of training in Copilot, I think, for the basics, for bringing people at all levels of business through on the AI journey, which is vital to every single person and upskilling everybody within the Australian workforce. I think it's fine for now, but geez, it's going to be this year or next year that we're going to have to say that we've got other things to train you on, because agentic is becoming huge. AGI is becoming huge, and these guys have just lost it. And I think that, they've reduced their pricing. There's fatigue there, and it's kind of the other problem I've got is they're a bit reactive to trying to sort of say, here's our value to the workers of Australia, to the people even using it. So they're trying to go, hey, just use the free one, don't use the paid one, and you can still get lots of stuff out of it.
We totally won't train on all of that information. If I find that Microsoft tends to, I don't know, this might be a hot take, but they tend to treat their customers with a bit of contempt. And that's never really kind of sat well with me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a license, isn't it? So, yeah, look, what did you give them, mate? Were you a C? Is that where you were? A D?
I've forgotten where I put them. That's how much I cared about it. D, I'm happy to meet you in C, like a low C. That's
low C? Let's go with low C. All right, mate. Done.
A couple of quick ones to end with. We'll do these two like kind of quickly, Apple and DeepSeek. So Apple, F, I think we could just say that and move on.
Yeah, F for fail. Like, just, wow, be a hardware company, keep pumping out good hardware, but is it still good? Is the iPhone 17 as good as the 16? It's probably the same thing. Like, come on, F, done.
And they've worked out that their niche is providing consumer hardware, which it always has been, and they're not going to be training the most amazing models. That's why, well, we'll do Google last, but that's why they're paying Google $4 billion a year so that they can put Gemini into Siri. But we'll get there. DeepSeek, the old guard of the open weight models that were high performing. Llew, what's your take on this one?
Look, I think, the OG of the upstart and upsettling, and I think it was last January, the whole public markets in the US went down because of DeepSeek, if everybody remembers 12 months ago. So, they reminded everybody that intelligence can be cheap, but intelligence that's cheap maybe comes from China. And then, you can actually run it on your laptop. But hey, you're driving your BYD car and now you're running DeepSeek. So there's all these sort of balls in the air about, profiling and all that sort of stuff that goes on. So that was the conversation a year ago. I still think that they're a force to be reckoned with. I think that they are now baked into that sort of maybe startup development community. I know a lot of startups that have gone with DeepSeek because of the token price and the speed to market, and they can test it on their own local infrastructure and then put it out to the VMs. But I actually think, to me, that they're a C. And they would have been a D, but they're a C because they're the OG. They're still fast. They're still cheap. There is the question mark again about, are they enterprise, and will a business in Queensland, Australia, Sydney, Melbourne come to us and go, hey, we want to run DeepSeek? Probably yes over Qwen or Kimi. So to me, they've probably got to jump on that Chinese open source market. But what about you, mate? What's your thoughts, James?
I can go with a low C, but I definitely put Moonshot, Kimi, and Qwen above them right now. It's like DeepSeek paved the way and are now paying the price for doing that, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But that being said, like, you go to Hugging Face, which is like the AI model marketplace for those who've never been there. Just go to Hugging Face on your search engine and check it out. But there are just so many what they call DeepSeek distills. Like, we've made DeepSeek so much smaller and fine-tuned it for a particular purpose. And for that reason, it's got such longevity. It's going to create a culture of working with it. So there's a moat there in many ways. But they just found themselves a little bit off the pace recently. So yeah, I'm popping them in as a C. So yeah, let's agree on a C for DeepSeek. And our last one, it's the big G. Google.
It's the OG. It's the S. It's the S for me. It's the super impressive, super awesome winner. And look, Gemini and what they've done with Gemini and where they've baked it into all of the different VOs and nano bananas and all the labs they're running with Pomeli and everything is just mind blowing. Now they're in browser as of last week, being February 2026. And I think now that they're in browser, they're going to really accelerate that whole go-to-market, and it's just going to become baked in. So I actually think they're threatening Comet, which is Perplexity's, which we didn't talk about today. We didn't actually talk about Perplexity. Yeah, but Perplexity's Comet browser is in real jeopardy, and maybe Perplexity as well. I think you might see them get acquired by someone. But I actually think, to me, they are the winner at the moment. They've eaten the lunch. I've been presenting on this quite a bit. I've got a slide on it. Basically, they've gone from 5.7% market share to over 21% market share in a year. And the old adage is never write off Google. They are just awesome at winning. And that's, based on their cash and their market positioning and who they are. They just build better, they build faster, and they build kind of like stealth. And then they're also doing it with Vertex. I'm getting there's a lot of stuff coming through Vertex that, a bit like GCP, Google Cloud, with BigQuery winning. I can see Vertex coming on the development side of the AI, agentic AI piece. So, mate, it's A+++ into the S. It's the winner at the moment for me. Your sentiment, your analysis, James.
They are absolutely S tier on all fronts at the moment. Like, it's really hard to fault them. I liken their approach to being an AI lab as Apple is to consumer technology. They waited for everybody else to screw it up, and then they just came in with their vast troves of infinite data. And we're like, here's our first one. It's okay. We're fine with it. Here's our second one. It's okay. Don't worry. Here's our third one. It beats everything at everything. Yes. And I think that they've done such a good job of keeping it under wraps and going to market and still maintaining that culture of experimentation through things like Notebook LM, through things like Nano Banana, the VO models, which are just technically just super impressive. Like, I had my auntie and my mother around for Christmas, and I did a VO video of them, and it generates voices for you. And I told them to talk about something and they were speaking with an American accent in this video, and I showed them and they just lost the plot. They couldn't believe
Yeah.
it was happening. It's just on all fronts, consumer, business, enterprise, they're just ticking all the right boxes for me. And they're not doing too badly in the agent harness space as well with Gemini CLI. The Gemini CLI and Claude Code are two go-to agent harnesses, and I'll use one to do the principal development, and then I'll go away and use the other to do code review, so I get the best of both worlds.
How good.
But look, how can you fault them? They
can't.
might have plateaued a bit, but that's only because they're at the top. So
Yeah, they are.
hey, where are they got to go?
Look, I think the only way is up for them, and I actually think they're just going to keep eating market share from OpenAI and ChatGPT and Copilot as well. So, yeah, mate, we're on to the recap. Does this feel right?
Okay, so just to recap for everybody, I've been keeping track of our tier list. We've got in the S tier, we have Anthropic and Google, and I argued Anthropic into the S tier, so we'll put them second. OpenAI as A tier, NVIDIA as B tier. In C tier, we've got quite a few, so we've almost got a neat bell curve. Meta, Quen, Moonshot, Microsoft, and DeepSeek. D is AWS, and F, our friends at Apple. I'm a huge Apple fan, by the way. Like everything sitting in front of me right now is like iPhone and AirPods and MacBook and the whole thing. But yeah, they kind of they botched the AI push. Does it feel right to you? If you were to edit it, what would you do?
No, look, I'd love to be able to put Apple a bit higher and not have any Fs in it. But look, I agree with all of that. I think that the key takeaways are that it's I think you can do your strategic partnerships and try and redraw the map, but it's actually frontier models that are winning, and it's the ones that aren't laggards, and they just like they're not in stealth, but they're just super confident and backing their own ability. Like the Googles, they're winning. And then the ones that are a bit sort of topsy-turvy and spent billions, a bit like Meta, who knows where they're going. So, yeah, the whole insight for me is, to everybody out there, don't get distracted by a leaderboard, focus on what's great for you and your business case. I think that's the key message you would have picked up in the threads today.
I couldn't agree more. And it's the right tool for the right job at the end of the day. Like for a lot of jobs, like I was saying earlier, for a lot of jobs, Quen models are our go-to model. For other jobs, Anthropic is, and for other jobs, Gemini is. And it really comes down to understanding how you're actually testing those models in real world scenarios, whether you know what good looks like, how you're measuring that, and whether you're going back regularly to ensure that it's performing in the right way for you. And size of model as well, like it's really tempting to just put Claude Opus 4.5 on everything, but it also just so happens to be $15 per million tokens, and and they're even losing money on that. So it's like the economics is still yet to catch up, and even then it is quite expensive. So sometimes it makes a lot of business sense to go with a smaller model to get 99.9% of the performance of something like Claude in the same use case. The dynamics as well are really, really interesting to me. Like this 6 months ago would look completely different for me. And I think it's something that'd be really good to keep track of maybe every once in a while throughout the course of the pod loop.
Let's do it every 6 months. Yeah, totally, James.
Yeah.
Every 6 months. I think, I agree with you. It's a moving feast. But look, next episode, we're talking about sovereignty and data, aren't we? We're talking about the importance of data, and that's going to be a cracker as well, because that's becoming the moat, if you like, of success. So can't wait for that, James.
100%. And when conversations like the ones that happened at the World Economic Forum happened the other day, it makes considering where your data is going just that little bit more of a business imperative. So that's going to be a really fun one. It's really, really important decisions being made in that space. So really looking forward to it, mate. And
awesome.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Prompt Cowboy. Today's episode is supported by the guys at promptcowboy.ai, helping businesses harness AI without the guesswork. Whether you're building smarter systems, automating processes, or just want AI that actually works, Prompt Cowboy has you covered. Thanks to Prompt Cowboy for powering the episode. Obviously, right on over to their site and discover how much time you could be saving. It's funny they're called Prompt Cowboy because they don't strike me as cowboys. They just strike me as really capable people.
Very capable people, Matt and Henry. Thanks to those guys. And Yeah, this is all been about anti-hype, and thanks for joining. Make sure you comment also on your channels. If you also think today's tier is different, make sure you put your own perspectives in as well. But thanks for joining us.
Like, comment, subscribe, follow us on LinkedIn and the other social channels. We'll see you on YouTube as well. And take care until next time.
Cheers.